Hello everyone, this is Polaris or Surreality here, and we are pumping out the videos as normal, especially with the recent updates that the game is getting. What we have right here are the patch notes for the upcoming patch this Wednesday night or Thursday, depending on where you are. And yeah, so we have the new Karma, Crimson Lily, right, which we already knew about from the trailer on Friday. We also have, it is verified, although we kind of already knew that it is a melee breaker. Of course, I love that they have to denote the fact that it's melee, implying that we may in the future ever get a ranged breaker. I don't know why you would ever have that. But anyway, so it says Crimson Lily's breaker that uses double glaive as a weapon. I'm also going to criticize the actual weapon itself once I get to the image. This is where it gets a little bit interesting though. Crimson Lily can sustain its attack freely by changing forms of double glaive, whatever that means. That's kind of weird English. Its skills can consume HP in return for higher damage, I assume. It says higher attack, but higher damage, you know, whatever. And even lifesteal or HP regen, depending on the situation. So for those who have played Elsword, which is KOG's other game, Crimson Avenger, which a lot of people obviously thought this Karma was inspired off of. It could have been Crimson Avenger and Crimson Rose, maybe a mixture, I'm not really sure. Either way, Crimson Avenger's Way of the Sword system, which in itself wasn't ever in Kurtzpel. Like Sword Talia never had Way of the Sword, that wasn't a thing. But more specifically, Crimson Avenger. Well, okay, for those who don't know how Way of the Sword works, right? Really briefly, you have two different modes, Annihilation and Gale. And it depends on what commands you're using that you enter each mode. And if you enter Annihilation mode, you basically, in Elise's case, or some people pronounce her name different, I always say Elise's, you get 100% crit rate on all your heavy commands or your X commands, and any annihilation skill I believe also gets 100% crit rate. So you basically just do more damage. And then if you're in Gale, all your Gale skills basically take like 70% of the original mana cost, and you basically get higher action speed as well as just better mana regen on hits and stuff like that. In Crimson Avenger's case, though, which is and up to Bloody Queen, because that's the third job, so it's that whole entire path. They modified that Way of the Sword system so that when you're in Annihilation, your attacks. I don't know about the commands. I kind of forget. It's been a while if the commands did it, but I know that if you did if you were in Annihilation and you did an Annihilation skill, it would consume HP in return for more damage. Of course, there were also skills that you could just hold down for it to consume more HP to do more damage, but I'm pretty sure Annihilation mode also made it so that you could do more damage from skills while it used more HP. But when you were in Gale mode, similar as it mentions here, you would actually heal HP back by using Gale-based skills. Although in this case, I don't think there's going to be a difference between two different types of skills. I think it might apply to all your skills. So it's going to be interesting to see how that goes off. I will say that having a breaker that has the capacity to do potentially high damage and sustain itself with life steal, this very much could become overpowered very easily. And even if we assume that maybe the heal isn't that much, I think as long as one of those two factors is better than the other, I think there's going to be an issue, right? I already talked about how like this might be a DB stream, double breaker, because right now, progressively over time, we've talked about, okay, double breakers should not be doing damage because double breakers have notoriously been annoying to deal with because they have really good neutral skills, really good combo skills, and realistically, and the highest break and endurance in the game, right? So they basically have high stats in everything. The only stat that they're not supposed to be high in is damage and range, I guess. And so we always advise them to not do breakers that have damage and range. Unfortunately, they have kind of violated that a couple times with like skills like Holy Cross, with skills like IC, and with skills like Shield Throw and Shield Pull. They are ranged skills, and so unfortunately they generally have to get nerfed for the good of the game, and even still are somewhat annoying to deal with. But more specifically, you have the issue of high damage, right? A breaker should never be doing relatively the same amount of damage that a Slayer is doing. There should never be a case where there's not a Slayer who, even on commands alone, shouldn't be doing more damage than a Breaker. Like, it doesn't really matter if the breaker is using skills. It, at the end of the day, should not be able to do more damage than a Slayer. And the problem is this breaker very much could fix that issue, which breakers used to kind of be able to do, right? If you thought about, or if you think about Judgment before it was nerfed, it used to do a lot of damage. It could hit for like 5, 6k. If on a Slayer, I've seen it hit to 7, 8k. Like, it didn't matter. Like, half the time people were just running hammer. Like, there were DB comps that were literally just running like sword hammer or fist hammer specifically so that they could just use Judgment for the damage, and then just like switch back to their other karma. So the whole like weakness of DB was supposed to be that it doesn't do that much damage. Which right now I will say DBs lack a decent amount of damage, but there still are ways to kind of help increase the damage output. But now, the only real weakness has been completely dismantled, basically, or alleviated for DBs, as you now have a new Breaker Karma, which will have high endurance skills, high break skills, and also apparently has the ability to create high damage. And as a bonus, you might even be able to heal, which to some degree might be better than skills like Sanctuary, which requires you to retreat and you have to time it. Whereas with this one, yeah, I will say I've always preferred heals where you actually have to engage with the opponent. Like Sanctuary, when it was really, really strong, was super annoying to deal with because even though it was timed and if you made them shift, they couldn't get it, they still could basically cast it from any distance and they could stay far away. Like they didn't have to approach you to do it, which to its benefit was one of the things that made Sanctuary so strong. With this, you do have to approach most likely, although you do have some range skills, so presumably you could at least get some health back. But either way, in a combo, it's not going to matter because, depending on what you're doing and how you manage it, if you're low health, you can, and you catch someone, you can just be like, all right, I guess I'm getting some health back, or maybe if you think you can kill them, you're like, okay, I'll just go for the high damage instead. Again, I don't exactly know how this damage heal system is going to work, but it definitely could be very insanely powerful for a breaker to have this. So we'll see how that goes. Maybe if the commands are like really bad and the skills are not that great, even though it already looks like it has some skills that are at least fairly decent. Like I'd say at least 2 skills from that trailer are decent. Even if you weren't able to follow up off the projectile skill in the trailer, I still think it would be a good skill. Like a range skill is still generally pretty good, especially one that hits 5 times. Um, and then you also have the one skill where you go into the air, which was purple, which honestly just made me think of like release rising wings. It would in theory operate the same way. In fact, in some cases it looks like it would be more consistent than Rising Wings. But again, we'll see. They didn't really reveal any skills yet, so we're still waiting for that. We do get a full picture of the full NPC, which probably is a very short NPC. Might be the shortest next to Lime, who knows. For one, I think she looks straight out of fucking Alice in Wonderland, let's be honest. The same blonde hair, the blue color scheme on the dress. It's obviously there's the reference to you know, Juliet from Romeo and Juliet being Capulet as her last name. But like her aesthetic is very similar to that of like Alice in Wonderland, which is kind of funny. Um, but we'll see. And as somebody pointed out, it's funny that her costume has a lot of blue, but then her whole entire like weapon trail color is just like bold, deep blood red, which is kind of funny. Also, again, when I said I was going to critique the weapon, if you look up images of double glaives, they do not look like this, generally speaking, right? Like they don't. You wouldn't make a double glaive like this, I feel like, because the blade, the sharp blade, is on each side here, when in reality, right, if you had this blade here, you would want this side to be flipped over so that, right, if you follow my mouse, right, as this blade swings forward, you would then have this side coming with it to do its second attack, which would then have the sharp side hitting first. Whereas if you did it with this blade, you would slash with this one, and then as you spin this blade over, you'd hit with the back end because it would be, again, like you would go over like that. And so why would you build the weapon like this? I feel like not even that this is a practical weapon in the first place, because this is gigantic. You would never be able to hold this. But even if you made like a really really small version, that for some reason you could actually lift, I don't think you would want it like this. Like this seems really weird that you would have it this way. I have no idea though, but seems kind of weird to have it built like this. But who knows? And then just get into some of the things down here. So they finally allowed you to do fours queues for 4 versus 4, which actually means that there might be a reason to 4v4 now. Like if I can get a party, like it actually could be to some extent worth it. Still no 4v4 for customs, but you know, not saying that I would actually like 4v4 that much more though, because there are 4v4 modes. Like God, especially this Karma. God, imagine this Karma part of a DB on Conquest. Dude, that's the last thing I want to think about. Ugh, whatever. But then we go to the bug fixes, where there are some pretty major things. So first of all, the first one, which is there's a bug where if the Karma was switched quickly while dashing, a dash would activate again after the switch. This might be a huge nerf to Fist, by the way. Especially for those who use Ultimate Heat in a combo. One of the things that DB had was, especially if you ran Sword Fist, a lot of DB players would do this, right? Is you would Ultimate Heat in combo if you needed to, maybe to counter peel or something like that, or you just needed a skill to get some regen back, or just want to deal some damage, whatever. There were some people who throw Ultimate Heat in a combo, and they would do a tab dash or a dash tab attack, or I don't know what the nomenclature would be. I think dash tab attack would actually make more sense. Or no, tab dash attack. Yes, that makes more sense. Okay, and so you could literally do this. You would just double tap, and there were like different ways. You could actually hit like W tab W, and then it would store the dash that way or something like that. And this almost sounds like you can't do that anymore, which makes me wonder if you are locked out of dashing now if you tab. Like you might have to you might have to dash, tab, and then dash again, which is not what people I think normally were doing. I'm not too sure how that's going to deal with that. If that slows it down or prevents tabbing out of quick dash, like that could be a really big issue for Fist Ultimate Heat, as well as just all Karmas in general, because actually, like, tabbing was a movement option out of quick dash, to like stop yourself or something, or to continue dashing with a different Karma. I even did it not with DB. I've done it with Breakers and Slayers when I just want to do a quick, when I want to do a dash attack, but I want to switch Karmas. So I'm not too sure how that's going to change that, but that might be something to look out for. Then they finally fixed Crusade, yes. Now if your Crusade connects, hopefully you should never drop straight down, which defeated the whole purpose of Crusade in the first place, which is kind of to be an anti-peel skill, so that it's like if you're comboing somebody in the air or on the ground, and you see somebody coming towards you to peel you, you can be like, oh, nope, I'm out of here, and you can Crusade away, which is kind of at least how I always viewed Crusade to be useful. And now, the issue though was that sometimes you would do that, but then you actually wouldn't move. You would hit the person, but then just drop straight where you already were, and then the person who was trying to peel you would just come up to you and just like stun hit you or something like that. Which isn't to say that Crusade won't be any less easier to punish, to some extent, because you can still like leap, stun hit, ultimate heat, all that, because it still has 10 years of end lag. The debuff duration increase, passive, that didn't apply to Crusade being fixed. That's also pretty nice. It actually made me wonder then if, because I was doing Crusade Judgment was guaranteed before. I wonder if it is, or if it isn't, or if it wasn't when the debuff wasn't a thing. Because I kind of dropped Judgment anyway after they nerfed it again. But with the Crusade being the way it is now, I'm actually somewhat more obligated to use Judgment again because I might run Crusade again on Hammer. And then the Ren stuff, this is just a bunch of debuff shenanigans that would happen with Revive. They didn't fix the tab on Revive, which is really annoying actually. That would be more annoying than this stuff. Because I think the debuff icon would remain, but you wouldn't actually like take any Ren damage. And then we have Lightning Fangs, Tomb of Blades. This was actually a pretty common one, is if somebody used it, you kind of would see this electric effect on your character. So it's just a visual bug, and I guess they fixed that. This one's more important though. Fix the bug where Lightning Fang would sometimes not be able to combo after chase depending on what action speed the Lightning Fang user has. I didn't think it depended on what action speed you had. I tested this last week. There was like actual kunai weapon costumes that affected how your combo after chase worked. Specifically, if you ran the Unicorn Academy, kunai weapon, it would not work properly. It had a much higher chance of dropping. I think it was close to, it was above 50% chance basically of it dropping the air LMB combo. Either way though, there's been issues with air LMBs on kunais dropping like a lot, and any way of making it more consistent is just going to be really good. So I'm very happy about that one. Although of course kunai is already pretty fucking strong as it is right now, but again, consistency is good. You always want consistency, even for perhaps the more overpowered karmas. And then basically it was just the last thing is all of the uh, nerfs basically that happened to the awakening skills in PvP have now been reverted in PvE because they kind of just did a general nerf. They didn't separate them, but now they say here, like in the brackets, they say this is now PvP only. So SRS break and damage is reverted back to what it was before in PvP. Same thing for Blazing Strike, same thing for Judgment, same thing for Death Blossom, which is actually really good for Judgment because Judgment is a really slow skill, so it better be doing a lot of damage in PvE. Also good for Death Blossom and SRS and Blazing Strike, although I don't know how good Blazing Strike is in PvE. Again, I'm not really that type of person. But yeah, that's actually about it for this patch note. I'm not too sure if they're expecting to do a another patch note later. There might be one because they didn't even actually acknowledge whether Transcendence would be a thing yet. I did say Transcendence, didn't I? I meant Awakening uh, for this Karma. So we have no idea if Awakening is coming with it. I would assume so because very similar to how they do it with the characters and paths in Elsword, it's very similar in nature where like their newest path, their fourth paths that they're releasing for the characters, it's not like they release one job, second job, third job as separate updates. They release a whole path all the way up to third job. So that they release first, second, Transcendence, and third all at once. So I would anticipate that this should be released with Awakening. So in theory, this karma should be released with 7 normal skills and 3 awakening skills, although you wouldn't be able to use the third awakening skill. So really still basically only just 2. But yeah, so that is basically it for this video. And if there's another patch note, you will probably see me making another video on it. But either way, I will see you in the next video. See ya.